Open Sky just wanted to have this webinar to connect with staff that have worked in all sorts of different offices for all sorts of different chair people and folks on one side of the aisle or the other, just to give an idea to constituents and to some of these advocacy groups of how is the best way to engage with a senator. So there are a lot of questions that folks have. We will have some Q&A at the end if we do have time. I will say there is a little Q&A button, and I did mention this to other folks, Christy, but we won't have you guys clicking on that and worrying about that. There's some people on my team that are monitoring that chat, and then they'll just let me know, and I'll relay the Q&A to you. So if Senator Hughes pops on, that's wonderful. And we'll just get started with the questions now, just so we can keep things going, because I know you guys probably want to have lunch too. So Brian, I'll start with you. Do you want to introduce yourself? Tell us who you work for, and then we'll just kind of popcorn it. You can pass it to somebody else.
Yeah, sounds good. Hi, everyone. My name is Brian Murray. I'm Senator Wendy DeBoer's legislative aide. I have served with her my entire time in the Capitol has been with Senator DeBoer. I came in her first 4 years. I was her administrative aide, and then summer of 2022 moved up to be her legislative aide. Been in that capacity ever since. Love working with her. Love working in the Capitol. It's a fascinating and fun spot to be in. But yeah, that's my little intro for me. Kate, I'll pass it to you.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. My name is Kate Wolf. I currently work for Senator Jane Raybould, District 28, right here in the heart of Lincoln. Senator Raybould is the fourth senator that I've had the privilege of working for. I came to the legislature in 2009 with Senator Lathrop, joined Senator Bowles, back to Senator Lathrop for a little bit, spent 8 years with Senator Robert Hilkeman prior to joining Jane's office. And Christina.
It's Christina Prentice. I am in Senator Gareca's office, serving as his legislative aide. Previous to being with Senator Gareca, I was also working for Senator Vargas for several years. I started off as an intern in Senator Vargas's office, and then I became his AA, and then I became his LA, so all over the place there. But yeah, happy to be here and excited to do this with all of you. And I'll pass it to Shelley.
My name is Shelley Swartz, and I'm the AA for Senator Merman. I've been in the Capitol for 3 years, and I've worked for Senator Sanders and Senator Merman. I was the clerk last year for Senator Merman, and this year I'm AAing for Senator Merman. So prior to that, I worked in education for 35 years. So I was a teacher and counselor.
Awesome. And Senator Hughes, you're right on time. Do you want to just introduce yourself and give us a little idea into what your staff does in your office and what engagement looks like with your constituency?
Okay. So yeah, I'm Senator Jana Hughes, District 24, which is Seward, York, Polk, and a little bit of Butler County. And I, as a senator, have 2 staff, my administrative assistant, Katie, and my legislative aide, Matt. And as far as community engagement, you know, Katie's kind of the gatekeeper, I guess, your AA. And so she takes the majority of the phone calls. Of course, they both answer phones and emails. And then one of my favorite things that she does is that she flags every email with it, whether it's a constituent or not, because it's very important that for me, and I think other senators, that we respond directly with constituents. Sometimes a bill, you'll get a lot of emails from all over Nebraska, but I'm very diligent about, you know, really wanting to hear what my district is saying. So she handles that. We'll, you know, take notes, listen, and then if I need to do a callback or whatever, deal with that. But I do read every email that comes. I assume most senators do. I think some people are kind of surprised to hear that, but that's actually can take a lot of time depending on the season of the year. But yeah, so that's kind of where we're at.
Thank you for that. And we did tell Senator Hughes, we know that she's a busy woman, so she's welcome to stay on if she wants, but absolutely no worries if she wants to go eat lunch. We just really appreciate her insights on this. So thank you so much, Senator Hughes. We'll just go ahead and we've got, 10-ish questions for you guys, and I'll direct them directly to each of you staff. So Kate, if you want to start off, can you talk about, for those who aren't aware, and Senator Hughes spoke to this a little bit, like, what does a typical senator's office look like? Does one office look different than maybe another, depending on where that senator is serving, on what committees, those sorts of things? And then how many people work there and what are those roles?
Yeah, I would say if you've seen one senator's office, you've seen one senator's office. It's, every office is different and they're unique because their districts are unique, right? No district is exactly the same as any other. There will be similarities and differences, and in every senator is going to be different. And so the needs that we serve for them are going to vary. And so I think that our roles and the things that we do vary. Senators come with their strengths and weaknesses. Senator Hughes was saying, she likes to read all of her own emails. Senators that I've worked for before wanted nothing to do with that inbox. And so, those sorts of things are always going to be different. And sometimes it takes a little while to get to know, your senator and how to best to serve them. With Senator Helkeman, once I realized, so he was a retired podiatrist, and he really came in and like everything, he wanted us to work just like his nurses in his clinic worked, right? Like, you go do all the things and then just pass it off to me when I have to do the important thing. And so I think, whether it's, how you're going to respond to constituent inquiries, how you're going to prioritize it. I think it's awesome that Katie, filters those things, for Senator Hughes. That's awesome. I know other senators that just want staff to respond. So does that cover the question, Lillian?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yep.
good.
I think that's,
Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say one comment that Kate reminded me of. When I first started, I came in this, I wasn't a podiatrist with a staff. I've never had staff, right? I've always wanted to do the whole schedule for our family, everything, like everything. And so when I was told, oh, you're gonna want a scheduler, and I'm like, this is like a foreign concept to me. I don't know what you're talking about. And then you get in here, you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I do without the people helping. And the other piece that gets really crazy is your schedule. So not just the emails, but keeping track of the meetings. And I've even coming back this session, I've forgotten I got to live by my phone calendar of this half hour I'm here, and then this person and this, and you just go down that whole schedule of the day. And that's super important. And I know one of the things that I love that Katie does, and again, every office is different, but attaching the detail to a calendar invite, like what is that meeting about, or the email that came with it, so you know who's going to be at that event or meeting and what it is in relation to. Because I'm one that'll click the notes and like do a quick scan before I walk into it. So has been a lot too, and different than normal life, I would say.
Thank you for that. Yeah, thank you so much for both of you commenting on that. Brian, let's go to you since you're next on my screen. Would you say, generally speaking, with like phone, email, walk-ins, those sorts of things, how many people do you think contact Senator DeBoer's office per week? And is it different, depending on the time of year? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so there's not necessarily a great way to do an average, right? Because the contacts that you receive are going to be different for each senator based on the committee that they sit on. And with Senator DeBoer sitting on the Judiciary Committee, we have a lot of controversial legislation that comes through that committee, both introduced by, people of all political stripes, of course, people of all political stripes commenting on those bills. And so there can be days where we have over 300 emails minimum coming to our office if we have a bill hearing that's coming up that's a very controversial one. But otherwise, I would say you have a fairly steady stream of people. I don't know that I really have a great idea of a number, 20, 30, 40, 50. It really does depend. It really does depend on the time of year. What bills are up in the senators, and this is all referring, of course, to times during session as opposed to the interim. I'll talk about that briefly later. But during the bill introduction period, you have a lot of advocacy groups and lobbyists who are looking to find homes for bills that they have had drafted. You have people checking in on the bills that you introduce, being like, what's this bill about? And you usually want to explain it to them. If you have a good relationship with that lobbyist or that advocacy group, maybe you can kind of tell them, well, did you read it? I had that joke yesterday with one about one of our bills in the Transportation Committee, which is a committee that I think you can imagine does not generate as much interaction as the Judiciary Committee. So it varies what's on the floor, what's in their committees. It just varies so greatly that at any point in time, there might be, like I said, 300 plus emails coming in. So if you're wondering why a senator hasn't gotten back to you yet, there's a chance that it's, their process that they wait to reply until a bill has its hearing, it's moved on. It's never bad to just send a follow-up very politely, just being like, hey, I just want to be sure you saw this email, just to send it back to the top of their inbox, because sometimes you can just get lost and inundated in the emails that are flooding into your inbox. During the interim, conversations are a lot slower. There's much less people just walking about, coming in to pop in your office. Meetings are usually always going to be fairly scheduled and less just kind of ran into this person. We need to have a meeting with them. Let's do it now. A lot fewer emails. The emails that we do receive are bill ideas from constituents for upcoming legislation, perhaps, issues that constituents are having with some form of state government or perhaps some company. And they're reaching out to us for assistance because they don't know where else to turn at that point in time. And so we try to help them and guide those. But during the interim, at least for our office, is a lot calmer. Certainly not 300 emails a day ever in the interim. Knocking on wood right now, just so you know. So yeah, that's what I would say is kind of regular for contact. And that's also phone calls and emails. I said mostly emails in all of my answer, but also have been inundated with phone calls plenty of times.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, and like Senator Hughes said, especially when senators are reading through all of the emails they get and cultivating like a really thoughtful response, it will take longer. And so sometimes it's not that they're blowing you off or anything. It's just that they're kind of trying to get the information that is appropriate to share with you. So thank you so much for that, Brian. Sally, I'm going to pop to you next. If I am a constituent of Senator Merman's, let's say, and I have a really strong opinion on a bill, whether it's his bill or somebody else's bill, how would I engage with your office? How would I say if I do or don't want that bill to advance? Can you speak a little bit to that?
The constituents are going to take priority for most of the senators because that's the people that they answer to. So they will certainly listen to everybody. We have people that call that are not from our district, but we keep those the accounting of it separately. So if it's a constituent, we'll count that. And if it's a non-constituent, we'll count it. But we'll give him that information in two different separate countings, just because he's really accountable to his people in his district. So we try to keep that separate. Of course, he will meet with people and talk to them if he can, if time permits. People are always welcome to call us and give us ideas and information that they wish to share. And we'll get a lot of calls over certain bills, and they'll come from all over, sometimes even out of state. So we'll keep track of it. But again, the constituents are the priority that we have because they ran on a platform and we're answering to the people that voted for the senator.
Absolutely. It is a little tricky too for you, Shelley, because I imagine, get a lot of calls from folks that just want to speak to you about education committee issues, even if they're not a constituent. Is that true?
Absolutely, yes. And that we do get a lot of calls about education. And again, that's important to the senator because those are issues that he's dealing with in the committee. And so he's going to take that into account. So it's important that we listen to people and hear what they have to say always. But again, he answers probably most often to his constituents.
Thank you for that great answer. All right, Christy, I've got kind of a nebulous question for you, but I think you can handle it. What would you say is the most impactful way, or if you have a couple recommendations, what makes communications with a senator, a senator's office impactful? What sorts of things do you look out for when you're looking for something that's really going to speak to your senator? What sorts of strategies do you recommend?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm sure things can vary by office, but I know something that was really impactful when I was working with Senator Vargas that we typically looked for is an email that like everyone has kind of said, if someone was actually a constituent of his. So when you do provide an address and a name so that we can just double check and verify that, that's a good thing to add in there. And then also when it would, a lot of times if it was like when Shelley was talking about education or a bill that kind of went into a committee, if it was someone who either had experience in that field or was a professional in that field, I know that was very impactful to Senator Vargas to hear from people who are affected by a law. And so when we were working on, I know, certain education issues, when we heard from teachers or folks from the education space, I know that that meant a lot to Senator Vargas to kind of hear from experts who the legislation will directly impact. And so I think that is something that definitely stood out to us. Another thing I think was when people made a stop in just in passing or something in the hallway, when they followed up with an email so that we had their contact and a name so we could remember who they were too. Because I think sometimes people are like, oh, I spoke with your boss at the mill when I saw him there. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then it was nice when we had like a follow-up of like, okay, this is the person you saw at the mill. Okay. And so I think just a consistency is key and kind of having a like I said, that official kind of side of things with a name and an address, that is super helpful too.
Yeah, well said. I completely agree. Senator Hughes, do you want to weigh in on that one? What is the most impactful communication? Is it when folks email you a story, a personal story? Is it subject matter experts weighing in?
Sure. I'll tell you the one thing that is the least effective is the group email, the mass emails. Like different organizations clearly pay to send out push notifications or whatever to their members, and then you get this I call it copy paste email back to me about, you shouldn't do X, Y. It's like the same thing, and it's like that is not helpful. Like what is helpful is if there's a situation with a piece of legislation or whatever, I want to hear the story of, I mean, if we're talking like, okay, we're saying stuff about education. I want to hear maybe from the superintendent of Centennial Schools that says, if XYZ passes, this is the effect on Centennial. It will make this happen, this happen, this happen. Then that gives me information when I'm looking at that bill, then to decide, or when I'm speaking on it on the floor to say, hey, this legislation for my district, my constituent, it does this and that, can we address that or, go with it that way. So definitely actual stories on how it relates to you and why, whatever that opinion is one way or the other. Another thing that is not effective is you open up an email and it's like, you were stupid if you vote for this and this and this. Like that immediately puts you on the defensive. It's like it might be a stupid thing, but don't be so blatant about it. Like list out why you think it shouldn't be done. And we're all adults here. Let's use big people words and be a little bit civil. So does that help?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think this information is just so valuable for anybody because I think that having worked in the building myself, I so understand what you guys are talking about. Having seen those 300 emails a day and a lot of them saying, hey, you're stupid. But I think that a lot of folks outside of the building don't know that. So just to this same question, Kate, Shelley, Brian, do any of you have anything to add that hasn't been said about what's really impactful for your boss?
One thing I could add, you don't always have to come to the Capitol to talk to senators. You can go to fundraisers or their speaking engagements and try and catch them there. And it's always good to bring, an elevator speech so you hit the high points because their time is limited. And if you will leave them with your name, number, and address, so they'll know if you're a constituent, they know how to get a hold of you so they can get more information if they need it. I think that's important to be prepared in that respect.
Sally, I think that is an excellent point. I remember I put my name in to run and like 2 days later, I got a call. It's Merlin Nielsen. He's all about property tax stuff. And he met me for coffee and we've had this relationship. I called him yesterday. We were talking on the phone. We text back and forth. Like those are the people that are, and we're talking about people that are very vested in legislation or, really follow it. But that is super helpful that you've got different constituents in your district that are maybe area expertise in something or another. And then you have that relationship and outside of here, like, oh yeah, you're the Farm Bureau guy, or you're the hospital, nurses anesthetist group. That is super helpful. And meet your senator before you have an issue. Like, introduce yourself. You don't even have to have an issue. Just introduce, hey, I'm so and so. This is what I do. Thanks for what you're doing, whatever. Then 6 months later, when something comes up, they're like, I met them first, and now we have a relationship, and now they're saying, what the issues are about a certain bill or whatever. So yeah, those are really good points.
Another thing about bills would be to bring that information at the end of session. Don't come in like the week of session. We always have that, and we'll try and accommodate. But there's just so much that gets left. We're trying to get things through bill drafters. So if you can bring it at the end of session, and then the staff can work on it all through the next few months to get it together. Just it helps time-wise so they can make the bill the best it can possibly be.
Yeah, the one thing I would add, and I mean, it's already been said, but just to extra emphasize it, be polite. I don't think anybody who's joining this Open Sky webinar is someone who is going to be rude, but I do just want to emphasize, be polite, right? Like, your senators are human as well. Their staff, who, as we've discussed, depending on the office, might be the ones who are intaking all of your communication anyway, are human too. We are doing our jobs to serve our bosses in the best capacity. So just be polite. Like I said before, if it's been a while since you've heard from somebody and you sent an email, send a follow-up. Maybe pop in and be like, hey, I sent this email before. I can send it again if it's lost in the inbox. No worries, just let me know. Things of that nature. Just be sure to be polite. We are all people, doing a job. The senators who are elected are doing their best. You might disagree with their politics. You might disagree with the policy positions that they take, but just be polite. That goes a long, long way. And I think any of you in your jobs know and understand that politeness is helpful. So already said, I just do want to emphasize that because I do think it's important.
Thank you for that. Kate, I'm interested for this next question, since you have so much institutional knowledge. Would you say, and it's an opinion question, but anybody can weigh in, would you say that testifying in person is more like powerful than sending an email or doing a phone call? Would you say that that's always the case, or sometimes no? What are your thoughts on that?
My answer would be sometimes, and it depends. I think that any member who has sat through committee hearings, and I was a former committee clerk, so I have also sat through my fair share of 8-hour hearings. If you have something unique to say, if you have a unique perspective, a unique offering on whatever bill is being heard in the committee, absolutely, you're going to make a bigger impact testifying in person. But if what you're saying is echoing the same things that are already being said in that committee hearing, it probably isn't necessary or maybe even as helpful to be there in person saying the same things. Yeah. That is something that online testimony, an email to your member, or a phone call would certainly suffice. You can also sign in your position on a bill. But you don't have to show up just to say, I disagree with this bill, and it's the same reason, 10 other people are disagreeing with it. Sometimes less is more, more often than not. But like I said, if you have a specific story, something unique, you're going to have that better impact being there in person.
Awesome. Thank you. Christy, you know that Open Sky's bread and butter is tax and budget. So I think that we naturally have some questions about what is the best way for folks to engage on the budget. And having worked for Senator Vargas, who did so much work on appropriations, can you speak to that a little bit? Are there things that are helpful or not? Is it kind of just a repeat of what you said before? What sorts of things, especially when people have concerns about, agency requests and things like that? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Definitely. I would say something that was really helpful when folks kind of connected with the Vargas office on this was when they were clearly keeping up with the appropriations schedule, which is posted on the website as well when the hearings are up. So I think when people contacted Senator Vargas about a budget item that was coming up on the schedule, rather than either way before or way after, because obviously the Appropriations Committee hears a little bit of everything. And so sometimes when it could kind of get lost in the mix, I would say that was when it would happen, versus if it was a couple days right before the hearing. I think that was a really good way for me to flag issues or awareness for Senator Vargas on issues that came up on the Appropriations Committee. And then I also think that following the publications that the fiscal office puts up is really helpful too, just so that you're kind of aware of what's being published by them, and just keeping up to date with things on the website, because I know Appropriations Committee can be kind of overwhelming for folks to follow, considering that it's every day, because most committees, then you'll have a little bit of turnaround time until the next meeting, but not quite as much in Approps. So, and then I would also say contacting every member of the Appropriations Committee about an issue. I think something last year that we ran into a couple of times with Vargas was that folks had reached out to him to emphasize how important they thought something was, but then hadn't reached out to the other members of the committee. And so I think just that consistency is good, because then it's not just one or two members hearing it, but rather the whole committee, which is super helpful too when they're execing and talking about 1,000,001 things that come up for them. So yeah.
Thank you. That is immensely helpful information that I think folks will be appreciating. So thank you for that. We've spoken to it a little bit already, but Brian, being in a Lincoln office, maybe you can talk a little bit about this, and then Senator Hughes can maybe weigh in too. If I'm in Lincoln and I want to stop by and talk to my senator, is just popping in the best way to go about it? What are the pros and cons of maybe just sticking my head in? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. So if you pop your head in, don't expect a guarantee that the senator is going to be available to talk to you. Senator Hughes has mentioned it. We had Kate and Christy and Shelley. We've all mentioned it. The senator's time is limited in some capacity, and some days they are scheduled from 8 a.m. until 8 p.m. and it's not even a late night floor debate type of day. So be understanding that if you pop in, you're probably more likely going to be talking to the staff if you just pop into their office. But whatever you have to say, go ahead and bring it in and say it. But if you want a meeting and if you want to have a guaranteed block of time with the senator, send an email to schedule a meeting. Depending on the office, a phone call obviously would suffice. We always have people send emails so we have a documented record of the request of the meeting, both just so we can refer to it later, but then also just so things don't get lost too much in any shuffles that could happen. And request for the meeting, and then you will hopefully be able to get on their schedule for a block of time. If it's just a quick meet and greet type thing, you're new to your position and you just want to say, hey, I'm new to this. This is our organization. The senator might be aware of the organization already, but not you. So be honest with the scheduling. Be like, I want to introduce myself because I'm new to this role, but I don't need a lot of time. 10 to 15-minute meeting would be all I require maximum. If it's about an issue and you want to talk longer, be upfront with that about talking longer. But you're always welcome to pop in. The staff will always be happy to chat with you about whatever you have to chat about. Understand there might be, I might not be the one interacting with you. It might be my coworker Isabel, because I'm working on writing an intro, or vice versa, right? You might not have both of our ears. But yeah, you're always welcome to go ahead and pop in if you're around. Just know, like I said, you might not get a lot of FaceTime with the senator. And if you're looking for that, schedule it in advance. It's, like I said, send an email, make a phone call, whatever the office kind of requires for those meetings is going to be unique to those offices. And so that will be the best way if you want to get time. But yeah, always welcome to pop in, say hi. We like to say hi to people. So.
I love it. You guys are giving me so many good ideas. Okay. We have one more question and then we have some Q&A coming in. The last question I'm going to ask you, Shelley, be honest, and I want you to be super honest. Do senators really care about the communication they get from constituents? You kind of already spoke to it, but go ahead.
And they do. Of course, the people that have elected them have, that's what they are asking, is that they follow the platform that they were elected on. And so they're depending on that. Now, that doesn't mean that the senator has his own areas of interest and he's going to follow that. Sometimes they can be swayed on ideas, but generally they're going to follow the platform that they ran on, and they're certainly going to listen to the people in their district, because those are the people that elected them, and those people are depending that the senator's going to follow through with what his platform was.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right. We do have some Q&A. Somebody wrote in and wanted to know about online comments. I know in the last couple of years, we just started kind of a new program, a new system, where folks can submit comments online if they go to the bill page. Can one of you speak about whether or not your boss reads those comments, how they access those comments? Do they print them and have them in the committee hearing? Or Senator Hughes, you might be able to offer some perspective on that too.
Yeah, what I take notes when I'm in a hearing, and when somebody comes and presents personally, I have jot their name down and maybe jot what they're saying or whatever. And then I do look at the comments, and then I kind of put a tally, like we got 10 for, 10 against, whatever it was. Now that's just me, right? Everybody's different. I think I think Kate mentioned this, if you really want to be there and make sure you're heard, it would be best to do it in person. But I'm also with her. It's not helpful to have 20 people get up and say the same thing over and over. So it's best if you have a little bit of a unique perspective, and hopefully what senator brought the bill, if a senator has done a little bit of work, they've kind of garnered support for that bill and at least we do this. We try to get 3 or 4 different people and each one talk about a different perspective of it, so that on our part, we're not, boring and we're just trying to make good use of time at the hearing. So yeah, the online comments there's some senators here in this body that don't even know how to use a cell phone. So I'm not sure those guys are looking at the online comments. Just saying.
Lillian,
I love that answer.
I like the online comments. I will review them sometimes when I'm preparing remarks for the senator. And see some pros and cons and kind of give us an idea, this even before the hearing or before something is going to be on the floor. This is what folks are saying for this bill. This is what folks are saying against this bill. And it kind of helps prepare her mentally for debate or for that introduction, or even to be able to be prepared maybe to answer questions from committee members when introducing a bill. And so I have found that it's not just, someone often weighing in, but it can also serve as a great way for people to offer valuable information on issues, especially, if you have many, many issues, right? And we all know, and maybe some of the folks watching know this or not, but a lot of issues come to the legislature again and again and again and again. And so we're kind of familiar with them. And so the online testimony kind of helps, I think, maybe some advocacy organizations or other partners or individuals to be like, I know they've heard this before, but I want to be on the record and put it out there, one more time, rather than take a 45-minute bill hearing make it last 3 hours. So.
Absolutely. Good answers. The next question is, where can we find a directory of staff members' names for each office? And this is such a good question because as staffers, we know that the roster doesn't come out until like so far into the year that it's maybe not even super useful for folks. So what would be a great place to find at least a phone number, maybe staff names, those sorts of things?
So phone numbers for all the senator's office are listed online. And so that's always the great way. If you have no idea how to get in contact with us, just go ahead and call our office and ask for our email. Tell us why. Hey, could I get your email? I want to send you some information on this bill. And so that's always a good way. The senator's emails, of course, are listed online as well. And depending on the office, my understanding is most offices, though not all, staff do have access in some capacity to their boss's email. And so even if you're just emailing directly to the boss, I might forward that email over to me, and then I'll just take over responding to you directly. I don't really know how much public documentation there are of staff besides self-produced staff rosters, though. I don't know if anybody else is aware of that for getting in touch with staff, but the senator's information is certainly all online.
Thank you. All right, we've got 2 other Q&A questions, and then I'll give you a chance to kind of give any final thoughts. The first of the last 2, I disagree with my senator almost all the time. Is it still worth engaging, emailing, calling, those sorts of things.
Say definitely still important. And I think too, there were, you know, especially having worked in the same district for quite a while, you remember names, you remember folks who are contacting you about certain things. And so we document all of our constituent contact too into an Excel sheet so that all of us in the office can see it, because not everyone is answering the phone or seeing all the same emails all the time. And so I would say that it still is definitely effective. And that way too, when you do something, they can look back at what you had previously said and kind of engage with you that way. I would say it definitely still is, because you're still a constituent. That's still your senator. So I would say for sure still important.
Yeah, Senator Hughes, would you say that you echo that a little bit, that even if somebody disagrees with you on every single thing, would you still want to hear from them?
Okay, sorry. I've got this laptop and the desktop thing trying to do that on mute. Yes, I don't, this is me. I don't think I could find a constituent that I disagree on absolutely everything with. So I'm pretty sure if we would talk that there's common ground there. I value differing thoughts, because that makes me but I like to listen to all sides and get the information and I always say the devil's in the details on a bill. You might support the general concept, but you know, the actual what's happening, you might not. And so I think anytime I can get information that, again, you're going to be better if a bill comes together with different sides and comes out, it can only be better. So I value that. I think there might be some senators that don't. So sorry if that's who you got, but keep at it. Why not? And be polite. Just always be polite.
Be polite is the theme of this webinar. I feel like that's something that we could all use to hear. So for sure, thank you. Shelley, maybe you can close us out with this last Q&A question. How do stories of impacted individuals compare to maybe an advocacy organization or a lobbyist when it comes to testimony or communication? And it can be kind of what you think your boss prefers, or just kind of across the board what you see in the building.
The stories are very important, and he listens to that, especially because then you can put yourself in someone else's shoes. And so he's very good about listening to constituents that tell things that have gone on in their life, and you know, try and use that. And he's good to bring that out in our hearings and things like that, because that gives him that knowledge of someone's situation, and he can apply that then to the debate that goes on. So I think stories are really the way most of us listen. So I think that's a positive thing. Always will listen to other people that have bill ideas and things like that. But I think stories are really powerful.
I agree.
Don't have much to add to that, but yes, stories are good.
Yep, I think that we've all worked for folks that were really moved by a lot of the stories that they heard. So great answer, Shelley.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Senator.
Have a good weekend.
You too. Well, those were all our Q&A questions that we got. I just so appreciate you guys giving such thorough and wonderful answers. There is really nothing more valuable than what staff and a senator can bring to this conversation, because you guys are the ones that are getting all this communication. And I know that in our world, we just want to empower folks to be able to connect with their senator better. So thank you so much. Does anybody have any closing thoughts, anything that they remembered when somebody else was answering, anything like that? Okay, I think we got it. Well, thank you so much. I'll give you guys some time back in your day, but thanks for being a part of this. And we really appreciate you.
Thanks, Lillian. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Have a good day. Happy weekend.